back up in 560 now.
In a world where love and trust should define family, these chilling cases reveal the devastating consequences of shattered bonds. From Vashon's household fight to Brown's tragic story, these disputes turned fatal, and unthinkable betrayals expose the darkest depths of human nature. Let's begin.
In a Muskegon County courtroom this morning when the son of a murder victim lunged toward the man accused of killing her.
On May 19, 2019, Muskegon Heights was shaken by a tragedy that no family should ever endure. Jamie Thomas Flowers, a loving mother and sister, was brutally murdered in her home. Her husband, Vashon Flowers, stood accused of the crime. It was a case of love turned fatal, with chilling details that revealed how a family was torn apart in a matter of seconds.
A husband and wife were arguing because she wanted him to keep his promise not to smoke. That led to a physical assault and hours later, gunshots.
The couple's relationship had been strained by arguments that escalated over time. On the day of the murder, Vashon and Jamie argued throughout the night. Jamie had texted Vashon, ending their marriage of just over a year. In a fit of rage, Vashon slashed her car tires, preventing her from leaving. Hours later, he returned, breaking down the front door. Her daughter, Paris Jones, hid in a bedroom with her young son as she listened to her mother plead, "You don't have to do this, Vashon. Please don't do this." Moments later, gunshots echoed through the home. Vashon and Jamie's relationship had been under strain for some time, with their arguments growing more frequent and intense. On May 19, 2019, things took a tragic turn. That evening, the couple argued nonstop, tensions boiling over after Jamie sent Vashon a text message saying their marriage of just over a year was over. Vashon's anger exploded. In a fit of rage, he went outside and slashed the tires of Jamie's car, making sure she couldn't leave. After that, he stormed off, leaving the house eerily quiet. Hours later, just after sunrise, Vashon returned. The peace was shattered as he kicked in the front door, his anger now uncontrollable. Inside the house, Jamie's daughter Paris was jolted awake. Frightened, she grabbed her 2-year-old son and hid in a bedroom, listening to the chaos unfolding. She heard her mother's voice, pleading desperately, "You don't have to do this, Vashon. Please don't do this."
Even with love in her eyes, as she looked up at you and loyalty in her heart, she asked you not to do this. You decided it was not enough.
Then came the gunshots, loud, terrifying, and final. The house fell silent. Paris clutched her child tightly, her heart breaking as the horrifying reality set in. Paris Jones woke up to a nightmare on May 19, 2019. From her bedroom where she huddled with her 2-year-old son, she heard her mother, Jamie Thomas Flowers, pleading with her husband, Vashon. "You don't have to do this, Vashon. Please don't." Her mother's voice echoed in desperation. Then came the sound of gunshots, shattering the early morning stillness. Terrified, Paris grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her voice trembling as she reported what she had just heard. When officers arrived, they discovered Jamie in the laundry room, lifeless, with 4 gunshot wounds to her torso. The tragedy had unfolded in the home they once shared as a family. Vashon fled the scene, leaving heartbreak and unanswered questions behind. For hours, the family and police searched for him, hoping he'd turn himself in. Finally, 15 hours after the crime, Vashon surrendered to the authorities, claiming he had heard they were looking for him. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Vashon showed no remorse. He maintained his innocence, even as the weight of his actions became undeniable. For Paris and her family, the loss of Jamie was a devastating blow, and the journey to seek justice had only just begun. On January 17, 2020, Vashon was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder. During his sentencing on March 13th, Judge Timothy Hicks spoke of Jamie's haunting last words and the pain inflicted on her family.
We say thank you to the people of the state of Michigan. We appreciate your honor and righteous judgment in holding this creature accountable for his actions.
Vashon was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Despite the verdict, he continued to plead not guilty, filing an appeal shortly after his sentencing.
We're convened here for an arraignment on a felony warrant complaint. You are Vashon Flowers.
Flowers is charged as a 4-time habitual offender. He has previous convictions for assault with...
The courtroom was filled with grief and heartbreak. Jamie's family and friends wept as they recounted her kindness and love for life. In a poignant statement, her sister asked, "Did you watch as the light faded from her eyes forever, or did you turn your back?" The pain of losing Jamie will remain, but her family hopes that justice will bring them some measure of peace. While justice was served, the loss of Jamie Thomas Flowers left an irreplaceable void. A mother, sister, and friend were taken too soon, leaving behind a legacy of love and memories cherished by those who knew her. Vashon Flowers' heinous act left deep emotional scars. The next case, an encounter in a parking lot, sparks troubling questions about justice.
He needs to go to prison, man. Come on, sir. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't crazy when he murdered my son, man. He wasn't crazy then, but he's crazy now.
On June 1st, 2012, in the parking lot of a Miami strip club, an armed security guard named Lucas Kendall fatally shot Kewan Bird and left Michael Smathers paralyzed. Kendall claimed self-defense, but his actions and statements raised significant questions. What unfolded would highlight the consequences of loose regulations for armed security personnel and a chilling disregard for human life. Lucas Kendall was working as a security guard for Force Protection Security when a tragic event unfolded in the parking lot of a Miami strip club. On that fateful evening, Kendall noticed two men, Kewan Bird and Michael Smathers, sitting in a parked truck. He claimed that he saw them rolling marijuana and felt threatened when the car doors suddenly opened. Acting on this perceived danger, Kendall drew his weapon and fired 8 shots. Kewan Bird was struck multiple times, with 4 of the bullets hitting him in the back as he desperately tried to crawl under the truck for safety. Tragically, Bird did not survive. Michael Smathers, the second victim, was also shot and left paralyzed for life.
His current mental state, they determined that he was competent to stand trial.
It's important not to confuse the idea of being competent to help in your own trial and being insane.
However, Smathers told a different story, one filled with confusion and disbelief. "We didn't exchange any words," he recalled. "I opened my car door and he told me to put my hands up. The next thing I knew, I was shot." At his trial, Lucas Kendall chose to represent himself, claiming that his actions were justified under Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law. He argued that the system was biased against him because of his race, stating, "The reason the evidence was fabricated is because I'm white. The individuals I shot were African American." However, his defense quickly began to fall apart as more details emerged. Witness testimony and surveillance footage told a different story, one that didn't support his claim of self-defense. Kendall's decision to fire 8 shots, including 4 at Kewan Bird's back as he crawled for safety, was difficult to justify. Further damaging his case, it was revealed that Kendall had a troubled past. He had prior convictions for DUI and public drunkenness, and he had been discharged from the Navy due to repeated substance-related incidents.
And then the issue is that you want him housed where?
At the same facility he's been housed.
In order to prevent him from decompensating?
Yes, Your Honor. He eventually decompensated to the point where he was sitting in a fetal position.
During the trial, psychiatrists assessed Kendall and diagnosed him with impulse control disorder and antisocial personality disorder. These conditions suggested deeper issues, but they did little to excuse his actions. Despite Kendall's attempts to shift blame, the evidence was clear. His reckless decisions had cost one life and forever changed another, leaving no room for doubt about his guilt. The jury found Kendall guilty of second-degree murder and attempted second-degree murder. Before the judge announced his decision, when Prosecutor Gonzalez continued the request to prevent Kendall from jail became too much for Bird's father to bear, so he attacked Kendall and said he kept shooting him while his back was under the top.
You kept shooting him while his back was under the top. You kept shooting him, man. You kept shooting him in his back. His back was turned to you, man. He was trying to get away from you, and you murdered him, man, like that. You murdered him, man, like that.
After all the chaos, the judge announced his decision, and Kendall was sentenced to life in prison without parole for Bird's murder, plus an additional 30 years for the attempted murder of Smathers. The case also sparked scrutiny of the lack of federal training standards for armed security guards, with a CNN investigation revealing gaps in background checks and licensing procedures. The tragedy left a deep scar on the victims' families and raised troubling questions about the oversight of armed security personnel. Bird's family mourned the loss of a young life taken so brutally, while Smathers faced a lifetime of physical and emotional pain. Lucas Kendall's shocking disregard for human life left families shattered, but the next case digs into the failure to protect an innocent child.
Who is not Jamila's father, was babysitting the girl when he claims she hit her head and stopped breathing.
In a heartbreaking case from Michigan, Jasmine Gordon, a mother from the Detroit area, was convicted after her 3-year-old daughter, Jamila, died from a brutal beating. The tragedy unfolded in September 2014 when Jamila suffered an injury while being babysat by Gordon's boyfriend, Clifford Thomas. The child was later pronounced dead due to physical mistreatment, including bruises on her head and chest.
After her mother, Jasmine Gordon, and her boyfriend, Clifford Thomas, rushed Jamila to the hospital.
Jasmine Gordon, a mother from Detroit, faced a heartbreaking situation when her 3-year-old daughter, Jamila, died after being beaten while under the care of her mother's boyfriend, Clifford Thomas. The tragedy unfolded in September 2014, leaving everyone devastated. At the trial, Gordon's lawyer, John McWilliams, tried to defend her by claiming that Jamila's death was due to a natural cause, an undetected brain defect. However, the defense quickly came under scrutiny. The lawyer had promised to bring in expert testimony to support his theory, but no expert ever testified to back up his claim. The appeals court, after reviewing the case, determined that Gordon's rights had been violated because her defense was not credible and lacked solid evidence. This decision led to the overturning of her conviction for involuntary manslaughter. Though the legal system showed compassion in recognizing the flaws in her defense, the emotional scars of losing her daughter remained. Jamila's tragic death highlighted the deep pain and confusion caused by a series of failures, both by the people who should have protected her and by the legal representation meant to defend her mother. Jasmine Gordon found herself in the middle of a heartbreaking case after the tragic death of her 3-year-old daughter Jamila in September 2014. Jamila was being babysat by Gordon's boyfriend, Clifford Thomas, when she was severely injured, leading to her death. The authorities determined that the injuries were a result of physical mistreatment, and Gordon was charged with failing to protect her daughter. During the trial, Gordon's lawyer, John McWilliams, tried to defend her by suggesting that Jamila's death was caused by a natural condition, a brain defect. However, his defense was criticized because there was no expert testimony to support his claims. The court found that the defense was not credible and that it didn't provide a proper argument for Gordon's case. This led to the decision to overturn Gordon's involuntary manslaughter conviction. The appeals court ruled that Gordon's rights had been violated, as the defense offered by her lawyer had amounted to no defense at all. At this moment, the member of the victim's family attacks the murderer. This legal error became a turning point in the case, highlighting the importance of having proper legal representation and supporting evidence in such a sensitive and tragic situation.
During the sentencing for a 3-year-old girl's death,
despite the overturned conviction for Gordon, she was still sentenced to 14 to 25 years in prison for first-degree child abuse and 7 to 15 years for involuntary manslaughter. Her sentences were to run concurrently. Thomas was sentenced to 57 months to 15 years for involuntary manslaughter. Both individuals faced significant time behind bars for their roles in Jamila's tragic death. The case was filled with heartbreaking emotions as both Gordon and Thomas expressed their sorrow and regret. Gordon tearfully pleaded for a lenient sentence, while Jamila's grandmother condemned her actions. The emotional weight of the trial was felt by everyone involved, including the courtroom audience who witnessed the powerful outburst from the grieving father. The loss of a young life and the failure of those meant to protect her left a lasting impact on everyone. The story of Jamila is heartbreaking, but the next case involves a horror that claimed not one, but 2 innocent lives.
The defendant's motion to exclude the death penalty due to serious mental illness at the time of the alleged offense.
On December 5, 2020, a horrific crime unfolded in Walnut Hills, Ohio, shaking the entire community. Vashon Brown, a 23-year-old man, was accused of brutally killing Natisha Latimore and her 3-year-old son, Nilo. The details of the case were heartbreaking, and the search for justice became a painful journey for the victim's family and friends. Natisha Latimore's story is a heartbreaking tale of loss and tragedy. Natisha was a young woman with a bright future who was loved by her family and friends. Her life was tragically cut short in her apartment, where she was found after suffering a fatal injury. What makes this story even more sorrowful is what comes next. Prosecutors revealed that Natisha's body had been in her apartment for several days before someone took steps to hide the evidence. Her little son, Nilo, just 3 years old and full of life, faced an even more devastating fate. It's believed that Nilo was taken to the Ohio River on a cold winter day, where he was lost forever. Despite tireless efforts by rescue teams and the community, his small body was never found, leaving behind a lingering mystery and deep sorrow.
The suspected killer, Vashon Brown, learned he could face the death penalty if convicted.
Brown denied any involvement in the murders, insisting he was not responsible. His defense team argued that he struggled with bipolar disorder, a serious mental health condition. They claimed this disorder made him ineligible for the death penalty under an Ohio law passed in 2021, which protects individuals with severe mental illnesses from such punishments. On a crucial day, August 31, 2023, the courtroom filled with tension as 3 psychologists took the stand. Each presented a different perspective on Brown's mental state. One expert firmly believed that Brown did not suffer from any severe mental illness. In contrast, 2 other psychologists diagnosed him with bipolar disorder, a condition marked by intense mood swings and emotional struggles. However, during the trial, Brown didn't show any remorse. Even among the 2 who agreed on the diagnosis, there was disagreement.
Vashon Brown is accused of murdering Natisha Latimore and her son Nilo in 2020. Reporter Courtney Francisco joins us live now. And Courtney, detectives say this motive could have stemmed from a miscarriage that woman had?
One concluded that, despite his condition, Brown could still comprehend the gravity of his actions and understand right from wrong. This conflicting testimony left the court with a challenging decision. Was Brown's illness severe enough to shield him from the death penalty? Or did he fully grasp the consequences of his actions? The outcome hung in the balance. reflecting a larger debate about justice and mental health. Judge Megan Shanahan ultimately ruled that Brown was mentally fit to stand trial and could face the death penalty.
The defendant's motion to exclude the death penalty due to serious mental illness at the time of the alleged offense is hereby denied.
She emphasized that while Brown may have bipolar disorder, it did not impact his capacity for rational judgment during the crime. At that time, Nilo's father got up from his place and attacked Brown. He now faces charges of aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, and gross mistreatment of a corpse. A trial date has yet to be set.
Hughes came up behind the defendant and then punched him repeatedly. That's what you're looking at right there. Two deputies wrestled Hughes to the ground. He was still struggling as backup arrived.
This case has left an indelible scar on the community. The loss of an innocent child and his devoted mother is heart-wrenching. Families continue to mourn, and many hold on to the hope that justice will prevail. Nilo's smile and laughter will forever be missed, but his memory fuels the quest for accountability and closure. Her grandfather said, "He chose to kill Nilo in an incredibly barbaric method. I still have nightmares."
Kill Nilo in an incredibly barbaric method. And I still have nightmares about this.
The heartbreaking deaths of Natisha and Nilo Latimore still haunt us. The actions of these family killers left scars that will never fade, and their courtroom confrontations expose the raw emotions of lives forever changed. Their stories reveal the devastating impact of betrayal and violence within families. But this is just the surface. The next video takes you deeper into shocking courtroom moments and the justice that followed. Don't miss it.